This thing right here is my Imacon Flextight Precision II film scanner. And today I want to make a video about this thing, talk about what it is, what it's good at, what it's not so good at, and of course we're going to scan a lot of film on this incredibly strange looking scanner from the year 2000. Now I have here the original invoice for this scanner. I'm gonna not reveal any personal information here, but this scanner, Imacon Flextight Precision II, in the year 2000 was $15,000, and that's without adjusting it for inflation. So in today's doll hairs, that's about 20,000 bucks for this film scanner here. Today we're gonna talk about it, I'll show you what it does, and we're gonna scan some film on it because it's a pretty freaking cool scanner for what it is. Also, did I mention I paid $500 for it? Let's talk about this thing. I'm gonna pull off this little dust cover here, and this strange tower contraption that you see up here is basically a housing for a lens. So up here is the lens that scans the actual film, and the reason it needs to look like this is so that the lens can move up and down to adjust for different film formats. Now, speaking of film formats, the way that this thing actually works is you have these different holders, and so it's kind of like a magnetic backing plate with a rubber holder on there, and you can load different formats into the scanner. So we've got a holder for panorama images if you like the X-Pan. We've got 4x5, 35 millimeter, 6x7. Now this looks pretty compact. This looks pretty sweet for a film scanner that can do all these formats, including 4x5. This would seem like a pretty sweet setup, but there's a catch. To make it work, you also need this vintage Macintosh. To go with that, you need a huge monitor, of course, so you can see what you're doing. And then you need all the stuff that's in this box, which is about 50 pounds worth of wiring from the year 2000. Like, this is what we used to need. I say we as if I wasn't 1 year old when this came out, but this is the kind of connector that you needed to connect something like a scanner to a computer before. I'll get the spaghetti wiring going here. I just want to point out this brick is what's needed to power the Imacon. There's probably a whole nuclear power plant in there. I wish I had the room to leave all this set up, but this little studio here is about 100 square feet, AKA the size of 3 Imacons. All right, we're gonna plug the Mac into some power here. I know the cable management guys are watching and they're going, but don't worry, it's just temporary. Now we can plug in the biggest cable that I own, and it needs locking pins. That's how big of a cable it is. This connects the scanner to the computer. You have to screw these in, like they genuinely have locking screws. And then the last cable here goes from the computer to the screen. One thing that the scanner is incredibly picky about that we found out recently is that for some reason it has to be turned on before you turn on the computer, or else it will not work. It was that way around, right? So you can hear it starting to come to life. The old girl is waking up from the dead. So now that this has woken up, we can turn on the Mac. Also, I want to point out, just like, look at this beautiful original manual that came with it. This is the kind of manual you get when you pay 15 grand. I think the main thing that this thing is really good at is making a really high quality scan of singular frames. This is not the scanner that you're gonna wanna buy to scan your 50 rolls that you just shot in a single night. This thing is incredibly slow, and it's not something that you wanna scan a ton of film on. This is more so meant for making a final really large scan of an image that you might wanna print for something like an exhibition. The main reason that I have held on to it and that I keep this massive scanner around is because it's really good at scanning 4x5 film as well. Just because typically with 4x5 film, you don't tend to shoot that many photos, so the speed of it is not really an issue, and it's very good at bringing out a ton of detail in the 4x5 images. Before we actually scan some photos though, I want to share some footage of how I shot these 4x5 freeway landscapes here in Los Angeles, and then you'll know what we're scanning and we'll see what this thing can do. We've got some 120 millimeter film here. I'm just kidding, 120 medium format, and some 4x5 sheets. This is the one that you just saw me shoot of the insane freeway interchange on my Toyo 4.5. So we'll just start off with this one. So because I shot 4x5, we're gonna choose this holder, and it just kind of snaps into there, into the mechanism that pulls the film in. And it's got a beautiful light table here for placing the negative correctly. So now very carefully, with our Kodak approved gloves, we'll lift up the magnetic holder portion of this. There we go. And you can pull it back off the light table. Just give it a little dusting. Now we'll slide that back in there. And then in the software, we'll select the correct settings to make a preview of this thing. You just hit preview and it's gonna suck this in.
You missed.
I did miss the button. There we go. I told you speed was not its strength. And this is just for the preview. Look at that. And there you go. Now we'll do kind of like the same thing you do with most scanners, which is you select a little area that you like, and I will hit the auto settings button just as a baseline. So that's much better. Now, one thing I will say, Imacon is not necessarily known for their fantastic colors. I actually think the colors are probably the biggest downfall of this scanner. They're just a little muddy. I don't know if it's the software that we're using today, but I find it incredibly difficult to get an accurate color balance on this scanner. I usually try and do this scan as just like a nice, flat, neutral base that I can work off in Lightroom, because the way this controls colors is really kind of annoying, I would say. It's very difficult to get a perfect scan straight out of this scanner, but given that this is meant to be for like final exhibition prints or something, it's not the biggest deal in the world. You're going to be doing a ton of retouching and post-processing anyway. So I'll do a bit more color adjustment. It probably needs a bit of contrast. Yeah, I like how that's looking. And now at its leisurely pace, it will scan the negative. We made another scan at 1500 ppi, and so far it's taken 11 minutes and 17 seconds. Now that this is done, just 12 minutes later, we can throw in our next negative. I have one more freeway shot on 4x5 that I'm going to scan, and then we'll move on to some 120 millimeter. Just kidding. So it uses the color preset that you made on the previous scan for the next one. So we're gonna undo. Just gonna add a bit of red back into the scan and a tiny bit of contrast. And I think we'll do the rest of the retouching in post. So let's do 1000 PPI this time, somewhere in the middle, so that we don't have to sacrifice another 15 minutes. At 1000 PPI, you can just see the film holder moving a little bit. There's a nice Corvette photo in here, so we'll switch it up from the freeways and do a nice bright, colorful photo so you can see what that looks like too. This is the Corvette Z06 for the shoot I did with road and track. Now we'll just change the frame size to 60 by 70. Does that look horrible? We're getting there, we're getting there. I would say that's nice. So let's get our Portra 400 borders in here for the Instagram likes. And then we'll scan this guy. Let's toss in one more 6x7 just in case that Corvette one looks a little funky, because one of the downfalls of this scanner, like I said, is definitely the color science that's built in. If anyone has any recommendations for scanning that actually improves the colors on this, feel free to let me know in the comments. But just tossed in another 6x7 shot. We're back to some rainy freeways. And once again, if you wanted to scan the middle frame, you'd actually have to cut the negatives at this point to fit them in the holder. Oh yeah, that's a nice one. That's a nice one until I start messing with the colors. I found that it does really well on neutral scenes. Like, this scene doesn't have a heavy cast anywhere. It's not bright blue sky or bright green grass. It's just neutral, and it seems to excel at these kinds of photos for some reason. This one actually looks really good right off the bat, so I'm just gonna go ahead and scan this guy.
I wonder what right off the bat is from. Is that like a baseball thing?
It's a good question.
You hit a home run right off the bat.
So now I'm just gonna get the scans off the computer with a USB stick, because believe it or not, this thing does not connect to Wi-Fi without some crazy optional Wi-Fi card. So for 500 bucks, I'll gladly keep this thing around to scan 4x5 when I shoot some 4x5 and make the occasional 120 scan as well. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And finally, thank you to the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an incredible all-in-one website building platform that you can use to build your photography portfolio online. I've been using Squarespace for so many years now, and they've made it so easy to get a website up and running with my photography. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can hit the link in my description for a 14-day free trial of Squarespace. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Willem for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Also, big shout out to Linus behind the camera for filming this one and for letting me use his Frontier, which is where I do most of my 120 and 35mm scanning. See you guys in the next one. Peace. Thank you, bro.
Of course, bro.
We pop-a-roonied.
Dude. A little paparuski.